Welcome to Miss Hell, a place where we dive deep into the dark and twisted world of female true crime. Grab a cup of tea and prepare to be shocked and intrigued by these amazing cases.
Today we're delving into the chilling tale of Elizabeth Bathory, better known as the Blood Countess. Accused of murdering over 650 young women between 1590 and 1610, she was also rumoured to engage in acts of cannibalism and bathing in the blood of her victims. Despite these shocking accusations, she managed to evade formal punishment and spent her final days under house arrest. Brace yourselves for a journey into the depths of horror and intrigue as we uncover the truth behind one of history's most notorious figures. On August 7, 1560, Elizabeth Bathory was born. She was a member of one of the wealthiest families in the country. Raised in the shadows of her family's dark history, young Elizabeth endured a childhood marred by abuse and trauma. But behind her captivating beauty and sharp intellect lay a darkness that would later consume her. She was the daughter of Baron George VI Bathory and Baroness Anna Bathory, both of aristocratic descent and second-grade cousins. Because the Bathorys often married within their own family, many of them suffered from mental illness or other genetic disorders. Despite her difficult childhood, Elizabeth received a good education, learning to speak several languages and becoming proficient in music and dance while developing a keen interest in science and medicine. She also learned how to manage the family estates and became skilled in horsemanship and hunting. At just 13, Elizabeth's life took a fateful turn when she got engaged to Ferenc Nardasti, a fellow aristocrat. The couple married 2 years later, on May 8, 1575, and settled in Nardasti's family estate. Their union would prove to be anything but conventional, as war and ambition tore them apart, leaving Elizabeth to explore the depths of her darkest desires. The marriage resulted in combined land ownership in both Transylvania and the Kingdom of Hungary. Whispers swirled of torture, mutilation, and even bathing in the blood of her victims. But were these claims the twisted fantasies of a bygone era, or the chilling reality of a woman consumed by her own madness? Rumour has it that when Ferenc was at home, he participated with Elizabeth in her practices of torture that ranged with the vastness of her imagination, piercing the lips and nipples of her servants with pins and needles, inserting nails underneath fingernails, stabbing with scissors, dousing victims in water to freeze in the snow, and so on. Elizabeth remained childless until 1585, when she gave birth to Anna at the age of 25, and within the next 13 years, she also gave birth to Orsolia, Catelyn, and Paul. Her letters appear to be the correspondence of a loving wife and devoted mother. Her husband died on 4th January 1604 at the age of 48. Although the exact nature of the illness which led to his death is unknown, it seems to have started in 1601 and initially caused debilitating pain in his legs. From that time, he never fully recovered, and in 1603 became permanently disabled. He had been married to Bathory for 29 years. Before dying, he entrusted his heirs and widow's well-being to Gheorghe Thurzo, who would eventually lead the investigation into Bathory's crimes. The death of Elizabeth's husband has a relevant role because it marks the spreading of rumoured atrocities throughout the kingdom. She had quickly taken over all of the estates and continued to run them smoothly. The only aspect of her day-to-day life that seemed to have changed was the rapid increase in the number of young girls she and her servant accomplices tortured, mutilated, and murdered. The first account of Elizabeth Bathory's killing spree appeared more than a century after she died, in the book Tragica Historia by Laszlo Turozzi. According to Turozzi, Elizabeth would kidnap young peasant women from the nearby town, or lure them to the castle with the promise of well-paid work, and would torture them to death through severe beatings, burning, mutilation, biting, freezing, or starving. She was then said to have ordered her slaves to gather their blood in buckets and fill a bath so that she could bathe in the blood of virgins to retain her youth. Since this first publication, rumours and stories spread quickly throughout the country and abroad. As accusations mounted and witnesses came forward, Elizabeth's fate hung in the balance. Elizabeth was described with vampire-like tendencies and was said to have bitten her victims and drunk their blood. Molten wax, knives, branding irons, rods and rope were used in the most gruesome fashion. Paper doused in oil was ignited between the toes and thighs of young ladies. At least one victim was smeared with honey, tied to a tree, and abandoned to the mercy of forest insects and other interested scavengers. Several were forced to eat their own flesh and those of other victims. During one beating, Elizabeth was spattered by the blood of her victim. While wiping off the blood, she noted that her skin appeared more smooth and more youthful. The belief that blood could renew her youth and beauty became an obsession that led her to even more heinous crimes. For that, new devices of torture were created. For example, an iron cage with spikes fixed inward was hung from a ceiling. Elizabeth and her friends would poke and burn a young woman trapped inside who would struggle in torment. The spikes inside the cage caused severe lacerations and consequent bleeding. Positioned underneath, Elizabeth drank and washed in the blood as it rained down. The stories of her crimes are accounted for by the testimony of more than 300 witnesses and survivors. But amidst the chaos of her trial, one question remained. Was she truly guilty, or the victim of a political conspiracy aimed at seizing her wealth and power? There are many conflicting accounts regarding the number of women Elizabeth Bathory is said to have murdered. However, according to another popular story, one witness reported that Bathory had a book where she kept a list of over 650 victims. The location of this supposed diary is, however, unknown. Let's reevaluate a little and see how Elizabeth managed to find herself in such a situation. Although it is commonly believed that Bathory was caught in the act of torture, there is no evidence of such thing. Initially, Thurzo made the declaration to Bathory's guests and villagers that he had caught her red-handed. However, she was arrested and detained before the discovery or presentation of the victims. It seems most likely that the claim of Thurzo's discovering Bathory covered in blood has been the embellishment of fictionalized accounts. Most witnesses testified that they had heard the accusations from others, but did not see it themselves. The servants confessed under torture, which is not credible in contemporary proceedings. They were the king's witnesses, but they were executed. Elizabeth Bathory was sentenced to life imprisonment in December 1610. She was walled up in her castle's solitary confinement chamber, with only small slits left open for ventilation and the passing of food. On the evening of 20th August 1614, Bathory complained to her bodyguard that her hands were cold, whereupon he replied,
"It's nothing, mistress. Just go lie down."
She went to sleep and was found dead the following morning. Elizabeth Bathory died on August 21st, 1614. The official cause of her death was heart failure, but there are various theories about how she died, including suicide or murder. Some reports suggest that she may have contracted an illness while in prison, while others believe that she was poisoned. However, due to the lack of evidence, the true cause of her death remains a mystery. Several historians have argued that far from being a cruel and barbaric killer, Bathory was in fact merely a victim of a conspiracy. The Hungarian professor Laszlo Nagy claimed the accusations and proceedings against Bathory were politically motivated due to her extensive wealth and ownership of large lands in Hungary. It is possible that Bathory's wealth and power made her be perceived as a threat to the leaders of Hungary, whose political landscape was overrun with major rivalries at the time. Bathory appeared to have supported her nephew, Gábor Bathory, ruler of Transylvania, and rival to Hungary. It was not uncommon to accuse a wealthy widow of murder, witchcraft, or sexual misconduct to seize her lands. Elizabeth's childhood was marked by tragedy and abuse. Her mother Anna died when Elizabeth was just 10 years old, leaving her to be raised by her father and stepmother, Ursula. Her father was an abusive alcoholic, and she reportedly witnessed him beating her mother and servants. Elizabeth's upbringing was also impacted by her family's history of mental illness and hereditary epilepsy. In case you wonder how was epilepsy treated in the 16th century, so did I. What I found out is quite bizarre to say at least. At the time, symptoms relating to epilepsy were diagnosed as falling sickness, and treatments included rubbing the blood of a non-sufferer on the lips of an epileptic or giving the epileptic a mix of the non-sufferer's blood and a piece of the skull as their episode ended. Elizabeth may have also suffered from a condition known as porphyria, which causes sensitivity to sunlight and hallucinations. These experiences and possible medical conditions may have led to mental instability and a fascination with blood. This modern-day theory of her having porphyria is based on historical accounts of symptoms that were described about her alleged crimes. However, there is no conclusive evidence to support this theory, since the disorder was not understood or recognized at that time. Another theory is that Elizabeth Bathory may have conducted medical experiments on her victims. According to this theory, she would test different techniques and treatments on her victims to see how their bodies would react to. The case of Elizabeth Bathory has fascinated people for centuries. Many believe that the accusations against her were exaggerated and the result of political plots by her rivals. Others see her as a symbol of aristocratic decadence and the depravity it can lead to. Despite the many different interpretations of her story, Bathory's legacy has maintained a lasting impact on history. Her crimes helped to shape how criminal investigations and trials were conducted in Europe, and her story paved the way for the development of forensic science. Additionally, her story has come to symbolize the dangers of unchecked power and the brutality of the aristocracy. Overall, the story of Elizabeth Bathory continues to fascinate and horrify people to this day. Whether she was a vicious killer or a pawn in a political game, her story has become a cultural touchstone through which we can explore issues of power, violence, and the darker side of human nature. While the truth of her story may never be known, her impact on history and popular culture is undeniable. If you enjoyed this dive into the macabre, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more intriguing stories from the depths of the human experience.